Greetings, it's Compiler and welcome to the Introduction to Blender for Game Developers series. In this video we will have a look at some examples on how to create procedural materials. Now let's get started. Okay, so we have a model of a container over here. We will be working on this model today. So I can select this model and go to Shading. In Shading I will create a new material for the object. We have those two default nodes, the material output, where something should be always connected, for example, the PSDF node, the material node, something should be always connected to the surface in order to be visible over here. If it is not, once again, it is black. So basically, everything should be always connected. We will change that through the video. We will change what is connected to the surface, but for now, let's stick to what we have here. So basically, as previously we have seen in previous videos, we have base color. We can change it, for example, to one color, in order to make like more metallic appearance. I will just increase metallicness, increase a bit roughness because it's painted metal, so it kinda looks nice, and I will increase specular probably in order to have it like lighter tint on the color. Okay, so now it's only material. It's actually already a procedural material, but as only a simple one with one color. So, and of course, as you can see, it looks not quite realistic. Most probably, if we have painted material, it will look like a combinations of different shades of one color. So, how we can create such combinations? Of course, for the textures, or we can try to generate it from the Blender itself. So basically, I can create any node. I can either click here on Add or Shift A. And what we are interested in is in some kind of a texture. So basically we have this texture section here, and we have a list of textures to be used. For example, we have like a checker texture. If you plug it in here, I can just connect the color to the base color, and we have a texture. A checker texture. I can change colors. For example, here the blue one, to the green one. I can change its scale. But what to do is, for example, in this case, of course, it's worked pretty good. So we still have all these fine textures. But what happens if we want to transform it somehow, change its position or rotation of this texture? It can be done with pressing the Ctrl T, selecting a node. So if you select a node, you can press Ctrl T and it will create your two nodes, texture coordinates connected to the vector, and then mapping connected to the vector of the texture. If it doesn't work, you can always create them manually. So Shift A and search for texture coordinate and do the mapping, and just connect them on your own. So basically, what we have here, in texture coordinate, we specify how we want the texture to be generated, and in mapping, we can transform this generated UV for us. Okay, so basically, in generated, as a default value, it looks kind of nice. We can check what it looks like in normal, for example. As you can see, it doesn't look any good because it uses right now normal vectors of the faces in order to display the texture. Okay, UV also doesn't look good because I haven't done any UV here. So basically, as it was by default, it is laid down. In object case, it also looks kind of nice, but textures are a bit smaller, so we can use that, obviously. The camera one just displays the texture with perspective of the camera, where we are looking at the object. It may produce interesting results, but remember that the most important thing here is a camera direction. In case of window, it is similar to the camera direction, but it just uses the window. As you can see, the larger the window, the larger the texture. Right? So basically, it doesn't matter where we put the model, it will just stick to the texture, which is kind of on the background of our application. And with the reflection, it just uses the reflection of the model in order to calculate the UV here. Right? So the object or generated one should be nice here. If we want, we can move the texture. Of course, right now it's not that visible because it's generated, but changing the location over X over Y, as you can see, kinda moves the texture. Rotation, of course, changes the rotation of the texture, right? Depending on which axis we rotate it on. And the scale, change the scale of it. Yeah, so if you want to have like these strips of different color, you can do that simply like this, maybe expanding on over X, maybe even more, somehow like this. Of course here it should also be adjusted, but still it kind of looks good for some cases. In our case it doesn't, but at least you can play around with that and find whether it's good looking or not. And of course, frankly speaking, everything here, everything procedural materials is basically based on checking out different options. Okay, so tracker texture is not really good for us because it's kind of a standard pattern. Here we have those squares. I'd like to remove that and add some kind of a noise, yeah, some kind of randomness. So I'm just add the texture. We can see what we have here. For example, we have like white noise texture, which is not good because it's completely random. We have just simple noise texture, which is more appropriate to be used. For example, in this case, it looks kind of like this. We can adjust that, of course, through the scale, through the details, the roughness of the texture, etc. And as you can see, it generates different simply colors. Yeah, it may look kind of nice, but we want to have one color, like at most two colors, and randomly change between them. So what we can do is to unplug the noise texture from the base color, and for example use this noise texture in order to combine different colors. So for example here we have something like, if you add another node, it can be like a mix node, combined color, or mix shader. In our case we'll just use mix node. By default is of floats, so we can change it to color, for example. Okay, as you can see we have two colors here to choose from, so I will just, in order for us to see the difference, I will just make them completely different. The blue and green I've connected to the result, and now we have just the mixture of those two colors. Yeah, the factor that we have here, this value, allows us to specify how much we want to mix those colors. So if the factor is 0, we will use the color A. If the factor is 1, we'll use the color B. So basically, if something is in the middle, it's just a mixture. Okay, so if we change it as a 1 value, we just go from one color to another. But if we will use something, for example a texture, as an input for this value to be applied, let's say, to every pixel, yeah, to every coordinate of our model, and for each coordinate the value could be different. So basically, if I just connect this noise texture factor here to this factor, we will get something like this. Yeah, perfect distribution from one color to the other. Okay, and of course, depending on what we would like it to be, more rough, less, yeah, maybe can add distortion in order to have like those roundish effect. Like this, something could be nice. And of course, here I can pick similar color and maybe just make it a bit brighter. Somehow like this, yeah. It's not too different, there's not so much difference, but still it looks much better than with only one color over here, yeah. Okay, so the same thing can be applied not only to the color, but for example to roughness or the metallic map, right? But what is interesting is right now we can mix two colors. So if we would like to mix more, we would have to provide another noise texture, yeah, because we will have a new factor. Or just use this one, but the results can be kind of unexpected. So what we can do here is replace this mixed color node with the more appropriate one, which is called a color ramp, which is this node is kind of used pretty frequently. So basically, once again, the factor to factor and the color to color. So by default, it's black and white. Yeah, and what allows it to do? We have those sliders over here on the gradient. So basically, if I drag this black slider to the right, it will increase the amount of black in our model, in our texture. If I will drag the white, it will increase the amount of white. Yeah, change this gradient, yeah, from the one color to the other. So what we can do with that, as you can see, if you click on those sliders, you get different color displayed over here. So basically I can change, for example, from this one, I can change the color to blue, and for the white I can change it to a bit lighter blue. Okay, and we will have something like this. Of course, we can right now have more control over how the texture looks like, of course depending on our needs. Yeah, and if we want, we can add another color here, maybe a completely different one, and just have a combination of several different colors over here. Of course, in our case, if we just want to color, for example, this box, 2 colors maybe would be enough. But for instance, we can have something like planet texture, for example, where we can have ocean, which is connected to the water, to the dirt, you know, sand or something like that. Then we can just use more greenish color, and then we will add another one like the white color here, and of course increasing the details and the roughness, probably something like this. We can create like a, of course we will still have to tweak those values a little bit because it's the combination of colors is not that good, but we can create like a quick material, for example, for the ground. Yeah, something like this. Okay, so I will go back to what we had previously. You can, of course, if you want to remove any slider, you can select it and press minus. Okay, so we have something like this. Maybe the color could be a little bit lighter. Okay, not to have too much difference in there. So this is kind of it concerning the color. Alright, so right now we may change a little bit the roughness and metallicness of the texture, for example, for the darker color to be more metallic or more rough, for example. And for that we can of course use this noise texture once again, but it won't be possible to simply connect this color ramp, for example, to metallic or to the rough, because this texture produced by the color ramp is colorful. I mean, it's not gonna be doing any good. So what we can do is extract it from here from factor, create another color ramp, and just connect color to roughness and color to metallicness. So now we can simply, by using this noise, adjust those values on how we want them to look like. Okay, it may be somehow like this, of course not the best, but it pretty clearly shows the possibilities. So the color ramp is pretty powerful tool where we can limit different parts of the texture, yeah, cut out something that is not important. Of course I will probably change the color of the black to like a bit lighter one, in order for it to be more rough, maybe a bit darker still, somehow like this. Of course, if you want this container to be completely new, you can just stick to one value, but here we can add a little bit of like variness to that. Okay, just simply with one material. Okay, and of course we have a normal. I don't think that we'll be using normal over here. We'll use that a bit later. But something like this, with combination of like textures, of generated textures with different colors, you may like to add some colors together. Yeah, for example, if you're using cycles, probably it's a good idea to use cycles right now, because if you do these procedural materials, they're not really possible to export them to anywhere. They're simply for the view in Blender. Okay, so in cycles, if you switch to cycles render engine, down below we have bake options. Yeah, we will look through those baking of the textures in a different video, but in cycles, apart from baking, we can use some more interesting functions, for example like ambient occlusion, in order to add more shadow to the details of the object. So ambient occlusion node. Here it is. And we can simply do something like this. The color, we can connect it to the color ramp once again in order to have more control on how it looks like. And now we can combine those two colors together. Yeah, of course we can use mix node, but mix node requires quite a factor. So we will not be using mix. We will try to use another function like multiply, for example, or the add mix add. Okay, we'll have a look at how it looks like right now. Okay, so we're adding ambient occlusion to the color ramp. Okay, as you can see, it doesn't really look nice, so a multiply in this case works the best, as you can see. Okay, but the factor, you may make sure that the factor is on 1. Yeah, because if factor is 0, you have some kind of a white texture because of multiplication, so the factor should be 1. And right now nothing really is visible because this ambient occlusion node only works in the render view. So in order to switch to the render view, we have to go here to the right top corner of a viewport and just click on the last viewport shading option. Yeah, it's called rendered. So something like this, as you can see. If I will simply connect color ramp, the base color, yeah, this previous one, we have something like this. But if you multiply it with ambient occlusion, as you can see, there are darker parts, yeah? And we can, of course, control darkness, like increasing the dark part of the color ramp, we will get more of these effects, okay? It may be too much, so it's always good to try and find out what works the best for this case, okay? So I will stick to something like here, okay? And if you want to look at how does it look like this ambient occlusion texture, you can always do that. If you have a Node Wrangler add-on installed, you can just select an object and press Ctrl Shift and click it. So Ctrl Shift and click on any object, any node, will allow you to switch. As you can see, it automatically connects to the material output. Yeah. So if you don't have this add-on, you can go here to Edit, Preferences, Add-ons, and you can just simply write Node Wrangler over here. Okay? And you'll find Node Wrangler, just tick it, tick the checkbox, and it should already be installed. Okay. So Ctrl Shift and click connects the node to the material output, so that you can easily switch between them to see how it looks like, for example, because if you want to create more advanced materials, it will be nice to have a look at different parts of your material. Yeah, how do they look like? Maybe you want to debug them or fix some errors. Right? So the color ramp looks like this. Yeah, right now, as you can see, those darker parts are exactly the ones that are multiplied by our model, by our basic color. So increasing them increases, as you can see, them over here also. So I'll switch back to the principal BSDF right now. So as you can see, something like this, combinations of different colors and with some kind of mathematics is doing pretty good work. Of course, once again, in order to get some decent results, you will have to try out different combinations, different colors, maybe different operations. Yeah? And here it is important to remember that when you use, for example, multiplies or any other mathematical operations, you're not performing them on one value, you're performing them on everything, yeah, on the whole texture, on the whole model. So basically you're doing that for each and every pixel, each and every coordinate, yeah. So you're multiplying the arrays, like sets of values. Okay, so what else can we do here? As right now we have a color for the model. If I want to make it look a bit like older, maybe add in like a bit of rust somewhere, yeah, randomly distributed on the model, we can do that, yeah. So basically I will just create a new material here, sticking through this one. So basically we have one principal BSDF, which defines our basic material. We have these nodes, and I will just duplicate a new principal BSDF connected to the material output, and we will just try to create a rust texture. How can we do that? Of course, For that, we can use either the same color mapping nodes, or we can just duplicate them. And of course, we'll be using like a noise texture, but maybe a bit the other one. So let's just create a new noise texture. So go into the texture, and we have some more options. And in this case, we will see the Musgrave texture. Okay, Musgrave texture may work the best. Okay, so right now it looks like this. If I increase the scale, increase the details, maybe decrease the dimension, maybe it will look something like this. Yeah, so it kind of looks like a Rust already, but without colors. So Musgrave texture would be great for this one. Okay. Great. So now just connect it to the color mapping, the object. Okay. What I can do now is, of course, connect the height to the color ramp. Once again, and color goes to the base color. Okay. So let's see at how it look like. So the dark color may be not the black, but for example, like a bit of brown, darker brown. The light one could be closer probably to the red. Maybe we'll add a new pin here, maybe a bit lighter or something like this. Okay. Of course, you may play around even more and get to the perfection of these results, but right now, for the simplicity of solution, it looks kind of decent. Okay. So as you can see, it is connected. We can do the same thing to the metallic and the roughness if you want. Most probably in this case, if it's kind of a rust, so most probably we will have the same values everywhere. You may still tweak something and check, maybe changing those values with some randomness will do great. But what we want is right now everything looks kind of flat, so we'll add a normal map to here. Normal map, of course, is not really created anywhere, so we'll have to generate it, extract it from the Musgrave texture once again. Why do we use my Musgrave texture again? Because this configuration is already connected with the color, and I want to keep to this specific layout of the texture. So basically I can just connect this height to normal through another node. So if you remember, to connect the texture to normal map, we just use node normal map, okay? But if you want to generate something, we will use node bump, okay? So as you can see, the bump, we have height input, and we can just simply connect it to the height. Yeah, here it is logical because it's height and height, but we can just simply connect color, for example, to this height map. Okay, and now I connect normal to the normal, and we see something like this. Okay, we already have a more rough look. If you want, you may decrease the strength of it or increase it. Yeah, larger. You can invert it if you want. Maybe with inverted one, it maybe looks better. Not, well, it depends, yeah, on the situation. And of course, if you will have more combinations of normals, you can connect another normal from another bump node, for example, here, and combine them together. Okay? So right now we have this rust material, which is kind of look nice, similar to the colored metal. And what we'll have to do right now is to combine them somehow so that we have the whole model with the colored metal color, this material, and some parts are displayed with the rust material. So in order to do that, we can simply combine those two materials, which is why I created them separately. Yeah. But first of all, maybe let's try to tidy things up. For example, here we can group it, selecting everything, clicking Ctrl J will create a group, yeah, of materials. So basically what we can do now is either right click and call rename or click F2. So we simply can name it like rust. in order to see. Yeah, and here select everything, join it, and change the name to colored metal. The thing I forgot, as you can see here, is the ambient occlusion, so I will just copy it from here and paste it into this part. Okay, so this one, the color will go to the B and it will be connected to the output. Okay, so how does it look like? Okay, we have those details. Perfect. So having those two materials, we can use the mix shader option to combine them. Yeah, so here we have mix of the colors of floats or vectors, but in order to combine shaders we have a different mix node. So new node, mix, and we have mix shader. Okay, so once again the first one goes to the first, the second one goes to the second pin, and everything goes to the output. You can see right now we have something like this. Okay, it's a combination of everything because factor is a half. 0 once again is the first option, the 1 is the last option. Okay, and now we have to figure out how we can easily connect, with which textures we can connect simply this to shaders, to materials. So basically, if we can simply use a node, like a texture, a noise texture for example, once again, we can just use vector here, and changing the scale, as you can see, we change the way how the texture looks like. But as I've shown you previously, the noise texture looks like this, so there are no completely white and black colors, which is why, again, we will use color ramp. Color goes to the vector, and now we can separate several parts, and if they are closer, if those pins on the color ramp are close enough, you won't get this transitions, so you'll get sharp changes between them. Okay, so we can try tweak something. The details is nice, probably even to the maximum. The roughness maybe somehow like this. The scale we can change, of course. Too much, probably scale should be lower for those islands to be lower. Okay, so we have something like this. As you can see, the rust is randomly distributed throughout our model. It is not the best looking, but still it is. Yeah, and it simply shows how you can use that to achieve these results. But it is not really realistic, because most probably those rust will appear here on the edges. Yeah, so simply the noise texture won't do any good right now. Of course, for the simple variant it is okay. If you want to have it more realistic, you will have to change something. One way to do that is, of course, to paint the texture yourself. We'll look at that in the next videos. But here, what we can do is try to calculate where are the edges and just simply paint the rust only over the edges. Okay, so to do that, we can use a node. For example, there are two options actually. One of them is better than the other, so we will look at the worst one first. So it's a geometry node. In geometry node we have pointiness. Okay, I can connect this pointiness to color ramp, connect it to the output, why not? And we can see here, if I will increase it, it does something. Yeah, it changes the values. As you can see here, the closer they are, the better it is. But still, depending on the model, you may get some kind of these strange artifacts that should not be there. In these places it's okay, but here it's definitely not. Okay, so for simple models, just using pointiness, and of course we're still in the rendered view because in material preview it won't look like anything. So pointiness simply doesn't really work out. Okay, what we can do is we can combine it with bevel, for example. Yeah, so we have a node called bevel. The bevel node, as you can see, simply changes the view of the model, so we can use it as a normal output in order to get like more rounded angles, as you can see here. Yeah, so basically it just rounds out all the edges. So it can calculate how do those edges look like, okay, and where they are. So we can find the edges using this bevel, and in order for them to be correctly applied to the model, we will have to use a normal here, a normal vector. So what we can do, we can just use a dot product function and calculate the dot product. Probably to be better to use it the other way, but you can try, of course, both variants and connect it to the color ramp. So now we have something like this. Of course, depending on where are those sliders, we will get something different. Okay, so now, as you can see, it looks kind of nice. Okay, still they are not completely black, so we won't get a perfect transition, but we are getting to that point. Yeah, we have those edges over here, and they're clearly visible. What we can do right now, we'll have to clamp those values, because right now they're kind of gray and a mixture of between 0 and 1. We'll have to clamp them in order to have more contrast, okay, more sharp transitions. In order to do that, we can use, for example, a math range node. So if you go from the dot product here, math range, once again, map range, sorry, map range, okay, the result goes to the factor, and you'll have to tweak those values on what we want to clump over here, right? So I will just increase this minimum, if you can see, like here, maybe even more, maybe a bit less, like this probably. And I will change those values around because I've tested previously it looks better with this way. Okay, it's kind of inverted, but still we have kind of perfect transition over here. Okay, and what we can do right now is, of course, first of all, change the color of the color ramp, you know, to get that perfect value. Okay, was better over here, yeah, to the right side, and we can control the effect using this radius. Okay, the bigger the radius, the bigger the effect. Okay, so most probably here we can use like 0.4, nope, 0.04. Okay, and I get, but if we do it like this, we will still get something sometimes strange, because as you can see right now, all the edges are white. Yeah, so basically if we'll just connect this output to the factor and output it, we will get rust on all the edges. Of course, it may be what you want, but right now it kind of lacks the rust on everywhere else. Okay, this is the first thing, and the second thing, most probably not all the edges will be rusted equally. So once again, the radius is responsible for that, and we can just simply use the input for the radius node in order to get to those values. Okay, so the noise texture, once again, to the color ramp. The color ramp may go straight to the radius, or we can simply, for example, tweak this value even more, like with multiply. The value will go to the radius, and the multiplication value will go like 0.04, something like this, maybe even more, maybe less, depends. Now we may want to change those values over here, or change the color ramp. If we do it the other way, as you can see, if the white is on the left, it looks a bit better. Okay, so I'll stick to that. Change a bit the scale, a bit maybe larger. Okay, and now we don't have those crossed edges everywhere. Sometimes it's more, sometimes it's less. Okay, probably 0.8 better. Okay, so what else can we do? If I, for example, increase this value over here, I will get more of the value. Okay, So you can increase the effect, decrease the amount of roughness just by simply dragging this multiplication value. And we can try and have a look at it like this. If we connect them close enough, we will be able to, for example, like this, we still get this rust around the edges, but if we position everything correctly, we will get them also somewhere else, but still most of them will be on the edges. Okay, so this may look kind of realistic, and of course the only thing that, like several things that really affect the results are this color ramp to change the noise texture and this multiplication value that we have here, of the radius. So increasing it too much will not really do that any good, because it will simply then use this noise texture. But with the value low enough, it will look kind of great. Okay. Alright, so this is pretty much it concerning this tutorial. So as you can see, Blender with its node editor or shader graph, whatever you call that, allows us to create different materials of different style for different purposes, for example, more realistic or more stylized ones. You just have to figure out how to do that, and it's kind of really pretty complicated topic because it's like procedural generation, so you have to change really how your mind works in order to get something that looks kind of decent. Okay, you'll have to practice and practice and practice. Of course, sometimes you can use just simple those parts of materials and paint them where you want them to be, and we will have a look at that in the next tutorial. But as you can see, it is possible even to combine several materials in a specific place that we want. Yeah, and of course it most probably won't require any manual fixes later. Okay, manual fixes. So this is pretty much it concerning this tutorial. If you found this any helpful or interesting, give a like, post a comment, and of course subscribe. So thank you for watching, and see you in the next video.